So I wanted to tell you that I was a little bit nervous about coming here because I've never been to this country before, so I wanted to do some studying, some scholarly research on New Zealand. So here's where I started. Big fan of this show, don't understand why they canceled it, I don't understand what the problem was. Started here, and then of course I had to continue with my research. Don't understand why they canceled this either. Yes, they ran out of books, but that did not stop the James Bond people. You know, I don't know. Peter Jackson could hand it off to Grant and we could just keep going, right? Of course, I couldn't just watch it. I had to dress up like Gandalf. This was me conducting a meeting at Microsoft. And then, you know, I couldn't stop there. I had to understand a little bit more about the music and the culture. So, I had to do the body paint by Kimbra. Now, you notice in this particular scene, I blocked out the face of the Australian guy. And then I did some workouts. I did the Sonny Bill Williams workout here. I actually didn't do the workout, I just watched it on YouTube. And that was tiring enough, actually. And then after that, I tried to learn the All Blacks haka, which was, you know, which was a bad idea. I can tell you that right now. And you know, I gotta tell you, if I were on the opposing team and I had seen those guys do that, I think I would just call it a day. I'd say, goodbye, that's it. But then I did create my own haka, which I call the technical communication haka, where you don't actually try to be threatening to the other side, you just sort of stand there and explain something very slowly. Like, press start, you know, something like that. That didn't work out very well either, so. I did, though, however, find something that I thought was a really good piece of technical communication. It's also part of New Zealand culture. Let me see if I can get this started real fast here. We'll just show this for 30 seconds.
Because we can all sing along.
So, the story that I'm going to tell you today is about our journey through voice. And icons, I think, when you're trying to make a culture change, are really important, and the robot was really important to us. We had this slogan, no more robot speak, and we used this robot kind of as a symbol of how you would speak and how not to speak. So, you know, we're at Microsoft, we're kind of geeky and we're nerdy, we like robots. And we used it as a symbol for how we didn't want to communicate with people. So I'm going to tell you a story about how we think about that and the journey that took place that started, you know, about 10 years ago. So you've seen this screen before. This is the blue screen of death. And I apologize for any sort of sense memories that you have from watching this screen. You're probably looking at this and thinking about the one time that you lost some data. But I don't know if you've actually taken a look at this screen and read the actual text. Most people just look at that and run away. But let's take a look at it. The end user manually generated the crash dump. Disable BIOS memory options such as caching or shadowing. And the part that I really love, down below at the bottom, it says technical information. I don't know what the other stuff was, a grocery list. This is technical information. So this is the blue screen of death that happened in, you know, Windows XP or Windows 7. For Windows 8, we changed it to this. Now the first thing you notice there is it's got a big frowny face. A frowny face emoticon. And a very simple piece of text. Your PC ran into a problem. We'll restart after we collect some error information. It's a very simple message. It's not a giant wall of text. Now this was controversial when it first came out. I remember there was a blog post that said something to the effect of, Windows 8 new blue screen of death is like a sad 14-year-old girl texting you. Which is kind of true when you think about it. But now it's sort of this accepted thing. It's not that controversial anymore. And it's a warmer approach, it's a more straightforward approach, and it gives you the information that you need. Just hang tight, we're going to restart. The story between those two screens is the story that I'm going to tell you today. because it's a dramatic change from the previous screen to the current one. And what that represents is a massive culture change at Microsoft. Because that old screen is the old way that we used to do things, the old way that we used to document things, the old way that we used to try to communicate with our customers, which represented this idea that you need to understand what we want to talk about, you need to understand our language, and you need to study to understand the information that we're going to tell you. The new approach is that we're going to come to you, and we're going to speak in your language. We're going to give you the information that you need to move forward. So why do we do this? Well, number one, our customers were begging for it. And I'll be frank and admit that we weren't doing a super great job of listening to them. They were asking for plain English. These are excerpts from actual comments that we get on a lot of our documentation. Plain English, plain English, plain English. And it gets a lot more painful than that. I'm totally convinced that the people who write the copy for their ads and manuals are sadists. Let's see if they can figure that one out. Are you kidding? Think about the average person who really doesn't come in contact with this garbage. This one really hurts. I'm a business analyst on an IT team, and I'm offended by how unfriendly your help is. That's not good when IT people tell you that they're offended. Simultaneously, there are some other things going on in the industry. Now we're talking about 7, 8, 10 years ago. You had the onset of social media and things like Twitter. More companies jumping onto social media sites like Facebook. And similarly, at Microsoft, we were rethinking how things should look. So we came up with a new Windows Phone interface that we called Metro. And this is now the flat interface, the flat tiles that you see all throughout Microsoft products. And the interface that you see being copied and adopted by all kinds of companies across the world. It's a simpler, more engaging way to interact with your products and understand what the UX is. So we started developing text that would go with this, because we realized that we couldn't speak in the same way and still match that design. Now this was before I got involved with the voice effort. There were some content developers over in the Windows Phone who were really pioneers in developing this process. But you see some of the text here, it's like, your phone isn't playing nicely with your PC. Restarting your phone should persuade it to work better. It's a very different approach from the user manually generated a crash dump. Right? Office had text like this. For zooming or zooming, use the controls in the status bar. Zooming or zooming. Typos, not on our watch. Let us check your spelling. Check your audio. Others might be hearing an echo, echo, echo. So these are things that we're doing to try to change the tone and get people to not just understand, but engage with our products. We want it to be engaging, have the text be inviting for you to participate in the products that we were doing, that we're creating. I'm going to talk a lot about change management today too. I know that we've been talking about this as a theme throughout our conference. And I think an important thing for change management are befores and afters. So this is one that I love. This is an Xbox. This is designed to talk to people who are playing games. So I'm going to read this to you. Prepaid codes cannot be consumer activated if the user has billing violations or their payment instrument is in decline. The user must first remove any violations before utilizing a prepaid code. Now, doesn't that make you feel like you want to go and play a game? Your payment instrument is in decline. It sounds like you need to go visit a doctor. Violations. I'm a customer. I don't ever want people to use the word violations about me. Right? Accounts with billing or payment issues can't redeem codes. Codes will work after the problems are taken care of. That's really what we're trying to convey. There's some issues with your account. Go fix them. We don't need to talk about your declining payment instrument. So in Windows and Edge, these are some of the current things that we have in our experiences today in Windows 10. You're about to make your PC very happy. This is a message to upgrade your computer. This is a 404 error that you get on Edge. That's odd. Microsoft Edge can't find this page. Here's one I really like. You're not connected, and the web just isn't the same without you. Let's get you back online. This is encouraging. This wants you to move you along to get you to the next step. We're not talking about violations here. So you're seeing a lot of different examples of our approach to tone. But underpinning those are principles. Now at Microsoft, we used to have a lot of principles when we were first starting this voice movement. Office had a set of 5 principles, Windows had a set of 5 principles, Xbox had their principles. And then you know what we did? We applied our principles to our principles and boiled them down to just 3. And these 3 are now adopted across Microsoft. I'm going to show you what those are. Warm and relaxed. We're natural, less formal, more grounded in real everyday conversations. Occasionally, we're fun. Warm and relaxed. That's a really important thing. Normally, when you go to difficult documentation, you don't feel like it's warm and relaxed. This is the goal that we're trying to achieve. You know, when my family checked into the Auckland airport and went through customs and the passport control people, the woman who checked us in was warm and relaxed. You cannot say that about any other airport in the world that I've been to. But the woman here at Auckland was very warm and relaxed and encouraging and just gave us the right amount of information that we needed to get to the next station. It's fantastic. Clear and crisp. We're to the point. We write for scanning first, reading second. We make it simple above all. We have a lot of tendencies in technical communication to overwrite the point. Instead of giving one option, we'll give 6. Or we'll give a bunch of caveats. We'll say, you know, things could happen here, or happen here, or happen here. It's like, the analogy I make sometimes is if you were reading a cookbook, and your recipe was telling you how to make 6 different cakes at the same time. Well, if you want to make a lemon meringue cake, use 2 eggs. But if you want to make a chocolate cake, make 3 eggs. But if you want to do a different kind of cake, only use 1. Step 2. That's a lot of how our documentation is structured, or was structured. Clear and crisp, get to the point, give the people the information that they need to move forward. And then ready to lend a hand. Okay, there's 2 key components to this principle. We show customers we're on their side. This is about avoiding blame. That's a very, very important concept, and it's something that our customers are extremely sensitive to. It can be as simple as a single word that can convey blame in the wrong place. Like, your problem. That your next to problem? What's your problem? It sounds blaming. If you said that to your spouse, I don't think they would receive that very well. Right? So it can be very subtle, the way that customers pick up on blame. You don't have to do things like mention payments and decline and violations. We anticipate their real needs and get and offer great information at just the right time. So this is key too, because if you offer the wrong information when the customer doesn't need it, that's a bad experience. You have to get them the right information when they need it, in the moment that they need it. So this is an important thing that we'll talk a little bit more later when we talk about the ways that we put this into operation today. So you've seen some examples. You've seen our principles. I want to show you some things that we also did to justify the fact that we thought we were on the right track. And this is some research that we conducted to test our various approaches to voice. So this is an article that we created, or actually many versions ago for Office. It's about these 2 features called autosave and auto-recover. Now the thing about this feature is that it doesn't save you if you've just lost something. You have to turn it on first. So if you haven't pressed save and you've lost your file, these 2 features are not going to help you. You have to turn them on first, and then it'll auto-save your files automatically. So the first thing that we tell people when we came to the old version of this article was, the auto-recover feature is not a substitute for manually saving your work by clicking save. So the first thing we tell them is like, you already screwed up because you didn't hit the save button. If you go if you go to further down in the article, we keep saying regularly saving files is the surest way to preserve the work. But sometimes you lose a file because of power outage or system's unstable or something goes wrong, you close your file. All different ways that you already know that you lost your file, right? And you'll notice the other thing about this introduction is it doesn't tell you actually how to use autosave or auto recover. That's way down in the second or third screen. So we created another variation that we call the empathetic version. Now this one is written like this. Crashes happen, the power goes out, and sometimes people accidentally close the file without saving. To avoid losing all your work and stuff like that happens, make sure auto recover and auto save are turned on. There is no blame there. These things happen. And then we jump right into the procedure. Click the File tab, under Help, click Options, etc., etc. Now the important thing to remember about this revision is it is 1/3 the length of the previous, more formal version. 1/3 the length. We cut out all that information, all that blame, all that sort of explanation of how you messed up the previous time, and cut it down to something that was both empathetic and straight to the point. That's the empathetic version. Right? Crashes happen, power goes out, sometimes it happens, they don't close the file without saving. Now I'll tell you, when we originally created this article, the word stuff was hugely controversial among our content developers. They didn't like that we were using words like stuff. That seemed too informal to them. Then what we did was we created the overboard version. Your files are in mortal danger. Call upon the unsung heroes of Office, auto recover and auto save, to save your work before disaster strikes. So we thought, okay, let's try something really wacky. Right? Let's get out there and go kind of overboard with the tone. So what we did, we had these 3 different approaches to this article. And we did a survey where we presented 2 out of the 3 versions, mixed them up at random so that no one would actually know which one they would got first, and asked them to rate them according to certain qualities that we were judging ahead of time, or that we cared about ahead of time, like professionalism, depth of information, or ease of understanding, clarity, all these qualities that we want people to rate when they perceive our information. Now, I'm going to show you the results of that. I've taken out the numbers because I can't show you the actual data. But you can see that the green means a positive result, and that every single audience that we tested preferred the empathetic version, the one in the middle. Another piece of pushback that we got from this approach was the idea that, okay, that's fine for consumers, but if you do it with IT pros, if you do it with developers, or if you do it with business decision makers, which is what BDM means, or information workers, they won't like it. Well, guess what? Every single one of those audiences did. And it wasn't even close. Typically, the variation you get from surveys like this is 1 or 2 or 3%. That's enough to validate your approach. This was double digits across the board. And here's the interesting thing. For the overboard approach, that came in second. Right? The crazy approach, unsung heroes, that came in second. Right? That's what the yellow bars mean. So this became a very important artifact in our change management strategy, because what we told people was that the riskiest thing that you could do is to keep doing it the way that you used to do it. That is the one that will fail hardest. Yeah?
So can you read the things along the top and the things down the side, please?
Oh yeah, sure. So these are
Tell us
the...
how we can access them.
Good call. So this is the first column here, set of columns here is IT Pro. That's the IT Pro audience. The second is developer audience. Third is business decision makers. Fourth is information workers. And the fifth is home users. And the qualities down the side are ease of understanding, usefulness of information, friendliness, credibility, professionalism, graphics, clarity of instruction, and depth of the information. Now remember what I told you earlier, which was that the revised version was 1/3 the length, and still people rated it higher on depth of information. So this became a really important artifact for change. because we told people that it was riskier to stay and do what you're doing than it was to move forward. If you went a little crazy, that's okay. That's less riskier than keeping your old approach. So that is a classic change management strategy. You let people know that if you get onto your thing, it actually is a safer way to go than doing things the old way. Okay, so we're going to try this. Okay, this is the part of the presentation where we're actually going to do a little of doing. So get a pen and a paper, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story. Okay? So yesterday, or Sunday actually, when we came into town, we tried to get a hop card, right, to get on the bus. And so, we paid the regular fare to get down to Brightmont Station, and we walk into the station, and I'm trying to buy a card because that's what I do typically when I go to a new country or a new city, is figure out how to get on the public transportation in the most efficient and most economical way, right? So that's typically by buying a multi-use card. So here you call it the AT hop card, right? So I get down to the station and I go up to the machine to buy my card. Well, you can't buy a card at the machine because you can only top off your card at the machine. You have to buy your card somewhere else. So I had to figure that out by looking at the machine and realizing that it wouldn't do what I wanted it to do. So I looked around the station and I went over to the ticket office, and there was a sign above the ticket office that said, "You buy your hop card here." It's like, great, I'm going to go to the window and buy my hop card there. So I start talking to the guy who's behind the window. The problem with this particular window is it's 1 inch thick bulletproof glass with no sound hole, so I can't hear what this guy is telling me. And there's no information anywhere about buying this hop card, so he's just sort of conveying things to me with gestures and screaming. And I'm sitting there going, okay, like, is it cheaper for me to buy this guy? He's like, oh yeah, it's like 25% discount, go ahead and buy your hop card here. It's like, okay. So I say, I want 4 hop cards, $10 each. He goes, great. He rings me up, that's $80. Like, where did the $80 come from? He's like, oh, well, you have to pay $10 per card. I'm like, okay. So I just paid 100% more to save 25%. And then he starts talking to me about the child discount. He's like, something about 24 hours. I'm like, what? Like, I can't, because I have a 9-year-old, right? And she has to get a discount, or she could get a discount to use this hop card, right? It's 25 or another 40% off if you use a child, right? Or if you have a card for a child. But he keeps telling me this thing about 24 hours, like it won't work for 24 hours. I'm like, what, do I have to leave my kid at the station for a day? Is that the issue? And there's no signage anywhere that explains any of this. And finally, what I discover after I pay the $80 for my $40 cards is that the information is contained in this booklet when you actually buy the card. And there's this screen up here, this page up here that explains what the child discount is. Your card comes with an adult profile, and therefore you will be charged adult fares unless you load a concession. If you are under 16, a child concession, parenthesis, at least 40% discount, asterisk, parenthesis, will be applied automatically when you register your AT hop card online with a correct date of birth. And then it goes on for the tertiary discounts, which I'm not sure what that means. Super Gold for senior citizen ID card holders, etc., free after 9 a.m., parentheses. If you ever have a sentence with 3 sets of parentheses and 2 asterisks, I think you know you're in trouble. All right, so your challenge is to rewrite this sentence. Rewrite this paragraph in 1 sentence, 20 words or less. I'm going to give you 4 minutes to do this. I'm going to put the winners. I'm going to choose finalists after lunch, and we'll announce the winners there. The prize is this fabulous Microsoft ArcTouch Bluetooth mouse. It's very cool because it folds flat, and all your friends and family will be impressed when you whip this out at your next meeting. Okay? So it is 9:24 right now. I'm going to give you 4 minutes. Go. Just use your piece of paper, and we'll collect them at the end of the presentation. 4 minutes. Okay, we're at time. Everybody good? We're all finished? Was it hard?
Not that hard.
Not that hard, right? Not that hard to make that more approachable.
And where's the privacy of information? What are they doing with your information when you register it?
We'll find.
Yeah, what you're supposed to do is go online and then put your child's date of birth on there, and then it associates itself with that particular card, apparently 24 hours later. So yeah, you just tell them that card number is.
And then
I'm explaining this to you. I'm just figuring this out.
Then why don't you make it snapper cards? And I refuse to register mine because they track you horribly.
Well, that's something to think about. I'm just trying to figure out how you guys do this. All right, so keep that paper at your table and we'll collect it all at the end of the thing and we'll give away the prize tomorrow. So, let's continue. We're going to tell the second part of our story now. You've heard us talk about tone. You've heard us talk about structure. You've heard us talk about principles. All these are sort of important things that when you're creating change, you need to create agreement around. For us, this principle of empathy became really important. How do we write with an empathetic tone? But empathy, when you really think about it, isn't just your tone. If you have a conversation and the only thing that you're paying attention to is the way that you speak, that's not very empathetic. Empathy is about listening. It's about understanding where your customer is. What are they going through? What part of the journey are they on? Are they exploring for fun? Did they just get a new present and they're opening it up and trying it out? Or is it something critical? Is it something where they just want some information? Is there something that they need to do their jobs effectively? You know, Kay just told me a story earlier today about her business and the fact that she has to get this information for safety procedures for creating baby formula. You don't want to get that wrong, because if you do, you kill babies, right? Where are your customers? What's their level of information that they need? So I want to tell you about a few approaches that we do, or that we have tried, to understand where our customers were in that particular moment and what they were asking about. And the first thing that I want to talk about is Big.com. So we work very closely with the engineers at Big.com to understand what people are asking about related to technology. I work in the Windows group, and we analyze their search intents by understanding what people are plugging into that big search box. You can do this yourself, right? If you start plugging in a query like change my desktop, you can see the suggested queries start to show up in your search engine return box. Right? And these are all things that Bing thinks are the same things that other people have asked with the same intent. So actually matching what a customer is saying to what they really mean is a tough technical problem. We call this intent analysis. Right? Change my desktop, is that about furniture or is it about software? Well, in most cases it's about software, but understanding the difference is a kind of a subtle technical problem. So we take a look at these queries and we group them into these intents, and we kind of try to understand what the customer is really asking about when they're in the search box. That's our way of listening to what the customers are doing and what they're asking about in that moment in time. And then what we've done is we've developed a response to that, something that we call instant answers. So these are pieces of technical content that show up right in the search return box, right in the search return page. And you see these answers, you don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to click off to another link somewhere else, right? You can see this answer that tells you how to do what it is that you want to do right there. So it brings it another step closer to your experience, right? But we don't want to just stop there. And part of our strategy, you can see this happen on Google too, right? They do similar things. They don't do it to the extent that we do in case of supporting technical products like Windows 10. And we have text, we have images, we have animated GIFs, we have videos, we have all sorts of ways of approaching the customer through this format. Well, we also consider it to be kind of a back end. It's a service that can be conserved up to other endpoints where customers are. Like Scott pointed out yesterday, people don't necessarily want to be in a search engine, right? They want to be in the flow of what it is they're doing at a given time. So we also produce these answers on Cortana. That's our digital assistant. Fortunately, it's not available in New Zealand right now. But it is this sort of smart digital assistant that understands what you're trying to do at a given point and speaks to you about what it is that you're doing. So you can put in a query into Cortana and ask it a question like change background. It'll come up with a response. It'll speak your response to you. And a new thing that we've done recently is enable these buttons in this answer that actually produces or sends you to the right place in the UX. So this particular answer will send you over to the settings screen so you understand exactly how to, or where you need to go to complete that operation. And this is the beginning, really, of the things that we have planned in terms of doing things directly for our customer. So they have to spend less time understanding, okay, where is the settings gear? How do I get to that? How do I press that? How do I go to the next step? We're going to do a lot of that operation for you right here. And take the load out of your head. We're no longer asking you to learn a whole bunch of stuff and understand our language. We're going to do as much as we can for you. But if you think about it, that approach, even these two kinds of approaches, are a one-to-many type of conversation. It's us creating a single piece of content that we're thinking is going to serve as many people as we possibly can. The next step in that, the next evolution, is the virtual support agent. So this is an experimental thing, again, only available in the United States, that we use as a one-to-one conversation with our customers. And there's some beauty in that capability that we've talked about yesterday. One is that you can understand and begin to understand exactly the precise situation that a customer is in. You can determine their context by asking them questions. Like, what version of Windows are you on? What Xbox do you have? What is your particular situation? What's the error code that you're getting? Can you plug that in? And it really starts to become more interesting when you start to do more things for the customer in that environment. So for example, now today, if a customer says, I can't connect to the Xbox Live network, the chatbot can go check the status of that network for the customer. Previously, we'd have an instruction that said, oh, you know what, Xbox Live might be down. Here are the instructions to go check Xbox Live. Go follow these instructions and then come back and tell me what you found out. So in this particular case, we can go do that we can do that for our customer automatically. And we can say, go ahead, just hang on for a second, we're gonna check the service for you. So the customer doesn't really have to sit there and try to learn how to check the uptime of Xbox Live. We will do that for them. That's our virtual agent. From a content perspective, it's a really interesting technical challenge. The first part of that is understanding what the customer is really asking about, because when they're in a chatbot environment, their queries are very different from what they use when they're asking a search engine. Search engine questions tend to be very short and terse. Chatbot questions tend to be a lot longer. And so understanding what the chatbot is actually, or understanding what the customer is actually asking about, is a really interesting and huge technical issue. And we go through all those logs, we check them, and we try to understand what is actually going on there. So I wouldn't worry about this, at least at this point at this time, as a potential replacement for your jobs. It requires a different approach to your job, and it requires a level of expertise in understanding how to work with this technology that is going to be more and more and more in demand. It requires us, as content developers, as technical communicators, to be flexible about how we think about content. It requires working with big data. It requires data analysis. It requires understanding what our customers are talking about at any given time. That's all higher level of expertise, human expertise, that is needed to light up these experiences. So think about it that way. So we've talked about the different types of formats that we're using for content that are beyond just traditional web pages or PDFs or whatever it is that you're using to communicate with your customers. I want to talk about another movement that's happening at Microsoft that is very closely related to content. And this is the inclusive design movement at Microsoft. Now, if you're in my workshop tomorrow, I'll walk you through the steps of it and you'll learn a lot more about it. I'll only touch on it briefly today. But it's a really important movement that talks about who we are including in our product experiences. Teaches us to recognize that we come to the table with our own biases about who can absorb content and who can't. Right? We build things for ourselves in mind. We just do that reflexively. And it's okay, we just have to understand that that's what it is that we do. When we recognize that exclusion, we can understand what those biases are at play and extend it to other people who may be excluded from that experience. So I'm going to show you a video of a Microsoft customer, and then we'll talk a little bit about what this means. And hopefully it'll work this time. So there are a couple of reasons why I love that film. This was created by our inclusive design team at Microsoft. And there's some really key things that he says in this film that I think are really clear reminders and calls to action. One is that section where he talks about taking the blue pill over the red pill. One thing that I've learned from working with this team in the past year and participating in what we call inclusive design sprints is that you cannot assume to know what somebody needs. You cannot just pretend to be a blind person, for example, and assume that you can then figure out what that person needs. You have to talk to them. You have to convey to them. You can't make assumptions about what conditions are producing their needs. You can only talk to them about what their needs are. He says, if someone could magically take my disability away, would I take it? I don't know. To me, that's a really powerful statement. Because it means we can't make assumptions about the situation that they're in. We can only learn from them the way they speak about it. The other reason why I find that film powerful is because his call to action to us is very clear. Remove the obstacles so that I can contribute my talents. The inclusive design process is about understanding what obstacles are, what you are building into your products to exclude people, and removing those exclusions and extending the benefits to more and more people. It's not just a Microsoft thing. There are scholars and product groups around the world who are thinking about this. It's very closely related to design thinking. Susan Goldsmith, for example, is a professor at UC Berkeley in California. And what she says is, inclusive design doesn't mean you're designing one thing for all people. You're designing a diversity of things so everyone finds a way to participate. You know, I was on Waiheke Island yesterday, and I took my daughter on a zipline experience. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful day, and it felt like flying. You know, we'd hook up to these harnesses and go scooting across the tree lines. It was an amazing experience, and it was an amazing experience way to experience the natural beauty of this place. And I was thinking about this afterwards, like, there is nothing about that experience that would exclude someone like Victor. You know, you could hook him up in a harness that was built for him and allow him to have that same experience that my daughter and I had. Could he do that today? No. There are all kinds of stairs and narrow paths and all sorts of obstacles that would prevent him from participating in that experience. But if you could modify it so that he could do this, you would open the world up for Victor, but you would open all of the world up for lots of other folks too. People with mobility issues, or seniors, or small children. You know, the possibilities start to expand exponentially when you understand what the needs are for this group of folks. Let's talk about the content approach. So my team helped design this inclusive design toolkit, which has a lot of different materials. Now you can go onto our website, microsoft.com/design/inclusive design, and download this toolkit yourself. It's got activity cards, it's got a manual that walks through the basic thinking behind inclusive design, and it's got principles. You know, I'm a big believer in principle because they allow you to agree on the thing that you want to change. There are key things here. I'm just going to read them real quickly. Recognize exclusion, learn from diversity, and solve for one, extend to many. They're important principles that we use to design products and experiences now at Microsoft. We undertake these principles in what we call inclusive design sprints, where we build these products, where we build ideas, we form the questions that we want to form, we think about the audiences who might be excluded from those experiences, we bring them in, and we ask them questions about their life and what it is that they're doing. And then we build new approaches to those problems and extend those. Content tends to be a big part of this process because how people understand information and absorb information is one of the obstacles that we can create that prevents people from really participating in an experience. So once you understand that and think about how you can create content that is more approachable and more accessible, then it starts to really open up your possibilities. You know, during one of these sprints, I interviewed this woman who had low vision issues. You know, and this is something that was increasingly getting worse over time. And she used a assistive technology, a magnifier, that would allow her to read her information on the screen at about 300 to 400% magnifier. So what that looks like is that you get a view of the screen that's maybe 10 to 15% of what most of us normally use. So she has to really focus in and move that magnifier screen around the interface so that she can absorb everything that she needs to see. So that kind of works, but when you have that as your primary and sole experience, you tend to lose a lot of the information that normally the rest of us take for granted. And what she told me was that her job was analyzing data for an HR department, that she was missing a lot of data because she would forget to go down to the bottom of the spreadsheet and click on the next tab. She didn't see it. And the thing that struck me was that, okay, I could go in and I could try to reproduce her experience. I could turn on the magnifier and zoom in 400% and see the same thing that she sees. But I have the ability to go back. I have the ability to zoom out. I have the ability to understand the context. She does not. And because she kept missing that data, she lost her job. She had to change careers and take on a different career because she was continually missing that information. So as a designer, as a content creator, I can understand, I can try to reproduce what it is she's going through, but I can't really understand the emotional impact of losing your job, right? Because the technology was letting her down. What I told her was that you did not fail. We failed because we weren't serving your needs. So these are the kinds of things that you learn through engaging in an inclusive design process. I'm not an expert in accessibility. I'm not an expert in disabilities. I would never pretend to assume that I would have those skills right now. I've been looking into this area for about a year, and everything I've learned so far has been very, very humbling and also inspiring in that way, because we are caught up in this passion. All of us are involved in this movement to do better. Not only for like the women, the victors of the world, the people I just described in terms of the low vision capabilities, other people with other disabilities. We are sort of inflamed with this passion to do better for them. And part of that passion is developing the right content strategy that helps them engage, that removes those barriers that Victor was talking about. All right, so we talked about different types of content. We talked about our approaches to instant answers. We talked about our chatbot. We talked about the principles. We talked about UI text and different types of articles and different ways that you can frame your content. All these things I'm showing to you today, I don't really think of it as independent things that are on their own. I think of them as artifacts of change. The befores and afters, the principles, our robot, these are all things that we use to try to affect change in Microsoft. I think our goal right, with all these experiences, is to pioneer a new way of thinking and a new way of approaching and meeting our customers where they are. My team at Microsoft, it's a small team. You know, we think of Microsoft as a giant corporation with lots of resources. It is. My team in particular is there's just 5 of us, right? And we try to do all these things because our attitude is that even though we're a small team, we are change agents. We drive change. The purpose of my team started out as kind of a normal team. We would document certain types of product experience in Windows 10. You know, we'd work with the product team and document the things they were working on and keep going. We've now changed and morphed over time into a team that is responsible for creating these more advanced experimental procedures and processes. My team is about driving change. So that's the message that I want to give to you today. We've talked a lot about adjusting to change or adapting to change. I think all of our attitudes as technical communicators should be driving change, should be leading it. I want to show you this curve. So before, when I tried to create change movements, and I am a veteran of the newspaper industry, and in some ways, you know, newspaper journalists are very agile, but in a lot of ways they're not. You know, they tend to stick in their own ways in terms of the processes, and they get them confused with what the values of journalism are. I was very frustrated by that. And I realized when I tried to make change happen, I was failing a lot because I was focusing on the wrong things. Now this is called a sigmoid curve. And what it represents is the people who are involved in your change movement. So you see up at the top there are champions. Those are the people who are engaged in your process, engaged in your change. They're the people who are the executives. Those are the people, you know, who control the money and what the groups do. So you need to get them on board. Amenables, these are people who are open to whatever it is that you want to do, but maybe not fully on board. You still need to talk to them and prove to them that you're on the right track. And then there's what I call the boat anchors. And these are the people who are actively obstructing you. These are the people who hate you, who will file anonymous comments about you, who will try to obstruct what it is that you're doing. And formerly, when I tried to enact change, I would focus on those boat anchors and try to convince them to be champions. What this curve does is illustrate the fact that, you know what, you don't really need to worry about those folks. You pay attention up here, where the champions are. You cultivate that group. You give them support, you give them encouragement, you give them artifacts like robot posters or t-shirts like this one that say "No more robot speak." Give them things to identify themselves as part of your movement. It doesn't take a lot of money, it just takes creativity. Put a sticker on your office door that says, "I believe in the thing." And you know what, something interesting happens, which is that the bigger that your movement grows, the more progress you make. Because those champions, when you cultivate a larger group of them, tend to pull everybody else along with them. The amenables start to move up the chain. The execs start to move up the chain. Even the boat anchors, they stop obstructing you. An interesting thing happens when you do that. The boat anchors tend to either come on board or they leave. And either one of those is fine. You know? 6 months down the road, 10 months down the road, 12 months down the road, or 2 years down the road, a boat anchor comes up to you and says, "You know what? Show me what you're talking about." That's when you open up your heart and say, "Welcome." Right? They'll get there in their own time, or they won't. But you don't focus your attention there. You focus your attention on the champions. This is an important part of my thinking about how to produce change. This is not my idea. This came from a book called Leading Change by John Cotter. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. I have a slide in the back with resources for how to adopt it. He has, I'd say, 8 tips and a roadmap for producing change. If you're interested in producing change, I highly recommend you go read that book. You know, when we did the office thing, I followed every single thing that he said to do to the letter. And it was amazing. So I'm going to ask you to think about this today. All right, you still have your pen and paper. I want you to think about 3 things. my change movement is, my next step is, and my best champion is. So what is the thing that you want to change? Is it the way people write? Is it the way people discover your content? Is it the way people work with you? Is it the fact that people don't pay attention to what your input is because they ignore technical communicators? What is that change that you want to make? So write that down. What's your next step? And it could be a simple thing. It could be the fact that you can just write down on a piece of paper in your journal today that says, I'm going to represent this change. And think about who your best champion is. Is it your best friend? Is it your spouse? Is it the person who sits next to you at the office? Write that name down and think, the next time I see that person, I am going to ask them to help me make this change. Think about those things and write those down for yourself. And I'm going to give you, okay. I'm going to actually tell you what I just did here today. I showed you the curve. And I didn't show you that curve as sort of an abstract concept for something that we did 2 years ago or 6 months ago or 5 years ago at Microsoft. I showed you the curve because the curve is here, in this room. And you are all on it. We are all on it together. We are all champions in moving forward. You are here today at this conference because you want to do better things at your job, because you want to be more effective, because you want to increase the credibility and viability of our profession together. There is a lot of energy in this room that allows us to take that and move it forward. I can't do that by myself. You can't do that by yourself. I can't do that with my own team or with Microsoft alone. The only way that change happens is if we work together as a family, right? Who are united behind the goals of change. You know, I was talking with Shelley earlier about this concept of mana. My wife is a Hawaiian native, and this concept of mana is really important to us. You know, and she told me that it's the same word in Maori language, of the power of the family, the power of togetherness, the power of pulling together and making things happen. You know, our native peoples understand this, but a lot of times in corporate culture, we don't. We think that we're on our own and we have to make individual achievement. But if we use this power and we pull together and we use the collective power that we all contain, that is how we make change happen together. Thank you very much. Yeah, there you go.
I don't know. Yeah, okay, there we go. I'm really curious. I know that one of the big, and I'm going to say it, failures of the past for Microsoft was the bouncing paperclip in Microsoft Word. And the paperclip, I think, was trying to do some of the things that you're talking about today.
Yep.
So why did that fail, but what you're doing now is succeeding?
I love this question. So Cindy is talking about Clippy, and it was the little cartoon animated paperclip that came up when it would say, "Oh, you're trying to file a divorce paper. Can I help you with that?" Or whatever it was that you were trying to do. And it's interesting because one of the books that I recommend is A Man Who Lied to His Laptop by a Stanford professor. His name is Clifford Mass. Actually was contracted by Microsoft to fix Clippy. So he writes about this in his book. And what he said was, the research experiment that he did was to have Clippy say things that were really derogatory about Microsoft. You know, like Scott used F-bombs yesterday, I'm going to use some now, which is, you know, so a user would call in, you know, start telling things to Clippy, and Clippy would say, "Oh, fuck Microsoft, man. Can't believe they did that to you. Oh, that sucks." And then people started to like Clippy. So that's sort of taking empathy to larger extent. But I think Clippy was really ahead of his time. You know, we didn't really have big data. We didn't have this ability to understand queries and serve up the right thing at the right moment in time. So the problem with Clippy, besides the fact that the animation was really stupid, you know, it had those bulging eyeballs and other uncomfortable things, was the fact that, you know, it came up at the wrong time. So again, one of my earlier points was that the greatest content in the world is bad content if it's not served at the appropriate time or the appropriate place. If you misinterpret an intent and you serve up the greatest piece of technical documentation ever written, it's going to be bad content because it doesn't serve the customer's intent at that time. So there are a lot of other things that were wrong with Clippy, but I think that was the key one, is it was actually became an annoyance because it didn't interpret what your intent was correctly. But read the book. It's a fabulous book, and unfortunately, you know, I studied under Clifford Nass, and unfortunately, he's passed away. But a lot of the justifications and a lot of the theory behind the way we approach voice was because of the research that Clifford Nass undertook at Stanford to understand how people reacted to different types of voice. And a lot of his original research was from actually automotive assistants, so voices that come through your cars, and how different cultures reacted to, you know, male voices versus female voices and the approaches that they took. So you notice that most cars today, if they talk to you, they have a female voice. That's a lot of the reason. The reason for a lot of that is some of the early research that a lot of the automotive firms did to conduct to determine which type of voice was most effective in conveying information. Yeah.
Has feedback about your wonderful presentation. Has anyone pointed out that writing is very small? Your voice is wonderful, the writing small.
So yeah, you know what? Did you hear the question? The question is, my writing is too small. Yeah, you know, I became to be really, that sort of became very obvious when, you know, I started getting questions about that. So yeah, it's something that I need to adapt for next time. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Scott?
Does Microsoft use any content technology to govern? Does Microsoft use any content technology to govern the rules that content creators are supposed to follow to create the correct tone?
Yes, so there are an interesting set of technologies that kind of judge the tone that you're using. There are lots of different types of tests and technologies, some internal, some external. There's a company, for example, called Acrolinks that has this technology that judges your voice and your tone. And by and large, we don't use a lot of that technology. We do some validation so that we're not, you know, doing things that are appropriate for other locations and things like that. But for voice and tone, generally, we don't do that so far.
Thank you.
Sorry, Peter.
Probably last question.
Thank you. You talked about cultivating change, and it sounded very much like you're cultivating the change internally within the company itself. But what would you recommend when you had to cultivate change with partners, companies who are investing in your software and who have very conservative approaches towards tone and these sorts of things you've been talking about, which we find within our company is very difficult to, to instigate change in that situation?
Yeah. So the question is about how you affect change externally as well, right? So your external customers go on the curve too. Like, where are they? You know, I can't answer the question for your customers in particular, but you can get an estimate of where you think most of your customers are. You know, we have a huge challenge in the inclusive design space. This is an open information effort. There's very little that we're keeping confidential about it because we want our partners to engage in this too. In fact, our global services division is really behind this, and they work with all kinds of companies all over the world, you know, to get the best use out of Microsoft products. And they're fully invested in teaching this inclusive design methodology. So it's the same thing. It's like you put your customers on the curve, you try to understand what they are, and you make them champions too. You give them the artifacts they need. That's what the inclusive design toolkit is about. It's an artifact that allows them to change. You You know, we have posters, we have all kinds of things that allow people to identify themselves with this movement. That's what the videos are for. You know, there are 3 or 4 other videos that we've created like the one that you saw today. So there's a website, you know, there's a website, it's an external-facing website that allows us to communicate with our customers and partners about how important we feel like this movement is. So the same techniques that you would use for your internal partners, you would use for your external ones too. You know, and it's all thinking about like getting aligned on those principles and understanding how to move forward and aligning around the processes. So often what we do is we sort of leave ourselves down in the weeds and we talk about the details of this particular text versus that particular text, or this particular feature versus that particular feature. And we don't pull up and think to ourselves, is there a principle at work here? And can we all agree on that? And then all those discussions become a lot simpler if you understand that you're working across these same principles. So the same discussions that you would have internally, you would have them externally as well. Are we out of time, or is it?
We are. Thank you very much, Doug. So a big round of applause.